You're listening to the Hello World Podcast number 12. My name is Sean Wildermuth, and I am your host. The Hello World Podcast is where you can hear from some of your favorite developers, authors, and speakers about how they got started in this business. We go way back to their first computer, their first code experience, and their first job. Today I'm delighted to welcome to the show Scott Hanselman. You probably know Scott as a web developer who's been blogging at Hanselman.com for over a decade. He works in open source on ASP.NET and the Azure cloud for Microsoft out of his home office in Portland, Oregon. Scott has 3 podcasts, HanselMinutes.com for Tech Talk, This Developer's Life on Developers' Lives and Loves, and Ratchet and the Geek for pop culture and tech media. He's written a number of books and spoken in person to almost 500,000 developers worldwide. I met Scott way back when we were both in Portland, right as .NET started to become a thing. Scott and I like to run into each other at conferences and talk about a number of subjects, including comedy, which we're both big fans of. I think you'll enjoy this pretty honest discussion between Scott and I. Take a listen. I'd like to welcome Scott Hanselman to the Hello World Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. It's just about to be Snowpocalypse here. I just was told it's going to have about 4 to 7 inches of snow.
Wow, so, and that's a lot for Portland.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. People are going to freak out and think that the world is ending. Anything more than an inch causes Portland to lose its mind.
Well, I don't know if you saw the lovely weather we had. 2 inches literally got people stuck on the highway. 2 inches.
Yeah, they were abandoning their cars
by the truckload. It was amazing.
Is it somehow different down there? I mean, 2 inches of snow is pretty much 2 inches of snow, right? I mean, 2 inches in Minneapolis is the same as 2 inches in Atlanta. But people were apparently in Atlanta in their cars for 12 hours, eating sun chips that they were finding underneath their chair in their car, and drinking old soda. Trapped in their car. Why not just drive away?
You would think it would be different. The problem is that it was badly managed, so that the local authorities decided that all schools were going to call all parents at the same time, 1:30 in the afternoon, and tell them all to pick up their children at once. And so the snow that had fallen became ice, because the thing in Atlanta is it's never quite cold enough for it just to snow. So it's close enough to freezing that the snow on the bottom melts and then refreezes. So, it was
that is dangerous.
Horribly badly managed. They should have kept them out of school the whole day, and this would have never happened. And it was just a mess. It didn't affect me, but I have friends who were in their cars for 14, 16 hours trying to get home.
Wow. I think I would probably just walk away. Yeah,
I can't even imagine it. Driving 15 minutes to my coffee shop makes me crazy. I'm not sure that 16 hours would I'd actually survive. 2 inches on the ground, and they find me in a fetal position in the back seat, and it's going to all be bad. So I think most people listening to this podcast may have heard of you. I think you're on Twitter. Is that correct? Do you have a Twitter account?
Yes. I enjoy the Twitter. Yeah, I mean, of course, like you said, people may know who I am, but I mean, having people know who I am is not necessarily a goal.
Sure.
It's just a side effect.
But I'm sure they're curious how you got started. Were you, a geeky kid?
I was. We like to joke that I was voted most likely to be convicted of a white-collar crime, which is actually not exactly untrue. I was definitely the AV kid.
Sure.
I was the audio-visual guy. I was the guy that threaded the projector. This is the 70s and 80s, so I don't know. Everyone who was that geeky kid who is of the age that I am remembers the first time that there was an opportunity to thread a projector. And, you're in the classroom and there's a moment of helplessness, and then suddenly tech support is required. And you're not old enough to know what tech support is, but you know that I can do this. You know what I mean? It's like that moment in Jurassic Park when that 8-year-old's like, it's a Unix system. I know this. And she has no idea what she's doing, but she knows that she can solve the problem. So she leaps to the solution to us to feel needed, and all the self-loathing goes away for just a moment while you thread the projector. So that's where it kind of started. And, it went from there to VCRs, to Apple IIs.
Was Apple II your first computer?
I would say the Apple II was the Apple II or the Apple I was the first computer that I touched in an academic sense. But the way that I kind of got out of the neighborhood was I was causing trouble, and they were telling the teachers that, we need to do something with this guy, or he's going to get himself into trouble, and he's going to start hanging out with the wrong people. And there was a lot of gangs in our neighborhood, and it was just a bad situation.
Where'd you grow up?
Northeast Portland.
Oh, okay.
And it was just not a very good area.
Sure.
And it wasn't like bombed out or anything, but I mean, there were gangs and there was trouble, and it was uncomfortable. But the point is that teachers back then, actually had meetings about kids to talk about how the kid was doing. Like they weren't as completely frantic and overwhelmed as they are right now. So there was a meeting with the principal and then either a superintendent or someone from the larger school organization that said, this is a clever kid. He's got promise, but at the same time, he is causing trouble. We need to figure out what to do with this child. And they made this deal. It was really interesting. I don't think they would make the deal today. There was just the one computer, but they knew that I liked using the computer, and I had a knack for it. They said that they would basically allow us to steal the computer on Friday afternoons. My dad could back the truck up against the school. We could basically squirrel away with the computer, and as long as we had it back by Sunday night, they would look the other way. Interesting. So, like, literally, we took this $2,000 computer home, kind of quote unquote, without asking. So we had kind of this tacit approval, but it was one of those, like, if you're caught, we'll deny it all kind of thing. Because there was no way. I mean, this was a big deal. There was no way that this was okay, but they let us do it. And so then I spent the weekends working on the computer instead of, on the block. And then one day, I came home from school, and the van, our family van, was gone. And in its place was a Commodore 64. Oh, wow. So my dad had sold the van, gone to Sears, bought a Commodore 64 and a little, crap 13-inch TV set, and said that, the guy at Sears says this is the best computer that you can buy. I'm like, but Dad, the van, what'd you do with the van? Yeah. And then that was it. And it became such a thing that they had to, my parents had to institute a 1 hour outside, 1 hour inside ratio. Oh, nice. Because I was inside too much. They would actually kick me out of the house and say, you can come back in an hour. That would have been good for me. That was sort of the similar circumstance. You mentioned going to Sears to buy the Commodore 64. I have vivid memories of that. I would go and, my mother would be picking up something at Sears. I don't know what you buy at Sears, but she always had something she had to buy at Sears, which gave me that 10 minutes to go write the random pseudo maze app you could write in one line on a Commodore 64 and all the computers. So that, I'd have that one thing to do when we went to the mall, because I'm still mall phobic, these many years. Yeah. I love the mall. The mall is such a pseudo place. You know what I mean? It's an invented location. The mall is like tiny Vegas. It's this place where people go to see other people, but not really interact with them, right? You don't go to the mall and talk to strangers, but you can just be there and have a sense of being a part of a community, because there's no villages anymore. Interesting. Yeah, that's not my perspective at all. No, but I think you're exactly right with the mini Vegas. I think that's the same reason I hate Vegas. But it's just an invented place. I like the mall. The mall makes me happy. It's energized. I go there sometimes just to sit. That's very interesting. Just to sit and do email and pretend that I know these people that are walking by. It's the town square. It is. Especially in Portland, but or the West Coast, really. The mall's taken on its own behavior out there for some reason. At least that was my take living on the West Coast. Yeah. Well, we don't, like I say, we don't have a lot of central locations, especially in the suburbs. So we do what we can, and the mall is part of that. Absolutely. So you had this Apple II, and you were taking home on weekends. Did you immediately start writing code on it, or were you playing games? No, I mostly played Conan the Barbarian and Lode Runner and stuff like that. And then I got Compute magazine and magazines like that.
Yep.
And then Logo and things like that. So I would start by typing in other people's code. And then I think I actually still, I could go look on the shelf and see if I have it, but I got this Summer Olympics game.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't a game, right? It was a book full of programs to play the Summer Olympics.
Oh, really?
I'm not talking about Epic Summer Games, which is like the one that everyone thinks about. I'm talking about it was a book of programs, and it was like, yeah, you can have the Olympics on your computer, and it was a bunch of basic apps, and you'd write them in, and then you'd play, and it had real basic stuff like, how hard are you going to pull back on the bow and arrow, and what's the angle, and then it would do some real basic calculations and tell you whether or not you hit the target.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And was this for the Commodore or was this for the Apple?
If I remember correctly, it was the Commodore, but I have to look. The two have conflated in my mind.
Sure.
But I remember typing a bunch of hex code in on the Commodore, and then typing in apps like Paperclip and some of the early, trying to get some of the early word processors to work, and convincing my parents that this was faster than the Smith Corona typewriter that we had. I also spent a lot of time fixing typewriters.
Fixing typewriters. That's interesting.
Well, the computer, there was no computer class at this time in the 80s.
Sure.
But there was typing class, and you would all go in, and it was all non-electric typewriters. So these were manual typewriters in a row, and you'd all sit there, and we'd all put our fingers on the home row, and we'd go and do our thing. But it was a poor school, so these typewriters started to die, and I think maybe half of them worked. And as I had proven myself to be apt at threading projectors, at some point I was like, hey, I think I could probably fix that. So I basically would take two typewriters and get one working typewriter out of it. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So I went with a room that had a half of them non-working typewriters, and I think I fixed about 2/3 of the remaining half.
Oh, nice. So
again, this is all about providing value, right? I didn't realize it at the time, but it's like, I'm useful. I can do this. This provides value to the community, to the group. So I like that idea of learning something useful and then applying it to the community, and then having them be appreciative.
And there was always that piece for me growing up that part of that was to get that, that feedback that, I was such an introverted kid that getting an adult especially to tell me I was doing something worthwhile was huge.
Yeah, well, everyone is trying to figure out what approval looks like.
Sure.
And as opposed to looking for it internally, we look for it externally.
And I think that, probably continues today when I check my my Twitter follower count I'm going to say a couple of days and lie, but you know how that is.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I stopped checking Twitter followers. It's just not worth thinking about it.
I think you're right. But I haven't. I haven't. So you're writing these basic programs. You're learning as you go, and so you're spending a lot of time in Commodore Basic and Apple Basic. Is
if I remember correctly. Again, this is 30 plus years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, and how does that manifest itself in school? Do you think about that's what you're going to do for a career? Is it just something you're having fun with?
If I remember correctly, I was trying to figure out where to go to school. This is like high school now.
Mm-hmm.
I had started a little company when I was 15, like a little LLC, and I was charging people to fix their computers, basically.
Oh, nice.
It was like, on the low end, editing config sys's and installing QEMM and things like that. And on the high end, undeleting files and helping people, get their homework off of a disk they treated poorly or something like that. And then had business cards and the whole thing. I don't know. I always had that sense of like business. I had business cards early on. I always thought that everyone should have a business card, pass it around, and adults really like industrious kids with business cards. They think that's really cool.
They do.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I still get excited when I get new business cards.
Yeah, I always get way more business cards than I need, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, like, I don't give them away that much. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not finding myself out there doing new business in the sense that I need business cards in order to pull this off.
That's true. But true.
I've got like 500 business cards I'm never going to use. It's just kind of random.
The only time anyone asks me for a business card is when I don't have any with me.
Yeah. I always end up business cards. It's like talking to a random person in the airport, and I really don't want to give them the business card anyway.
Yeah.
Or after a talk at a conference.
Yeah.
But I was doing this kind of small business stuff, and I remember actually I think I lied about my age, and I had like an American Express corporate card.
Oh wow!
And I got in trouble once because I dropped the card in the hallway, right? So then the principal finds the card and then calls my dad in and starts lecturing him, which is really a weird dynamic. The principal is lecturing my father, and like, I can't imagine why I would let my child have a credit card, because he thought it was my dad's credit card.
Sure.
And my dad, though, did not know about the existence of this card. Totally backed me up. You know what I mean? Like, like, hey, my young man knows what he's doing. He's got a small business, and give him. And then, of course, after having backed me up publicly, he's like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And then I was supposed to go to college, but I was not. I may have been intellectually ready to do it, but I was not kind of emotionally ready. And I visited a bunch of schools. I went over to Boston, and I toured a bunch of schools over there and did the college tour, but didn't really have any money for it.
Sure.
And didn't really. And frankly, I just was lazy on the scholarship side. Like, you always read about that girl everyone has a girl in their local area who applies for 750 scholarships and gets like 400 of them. Mm-hmm. And, they write a whole article about every neighborhood has this person, right?
Everyone.
She's industrious, and she $200 at a time assembles a full ride, not on the, hey, one scholarship full ride to school, but out of 400 tiny scholarships from the local horticultural society or whatever. I was not that person. So come like April of my senior year, I had nothing. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And then, true story, a buddy of mine was telling me, "Yeah, you got to learn C++, man. C++ is going to change everything." And he tried to teach me pointers, and then said that the local community college was going to be doing their very first software engineering degree. It was the first year. It was not computer science. It was software engineering. It was a big controversy because the computer science department thought it was totally unacceptable.
Sure.
This was going to, software engineering is not a real thing, and it's not okay. So I was like, okay, that seems low effort. So I showed up on the first day at the very first class of this software engineering thing at the local community college, and my buddy wasn't there. But then I stayed in the class. I stayed in the class, and I graduated, and I did an associate's in software engineering. And what was nice about that is that they had set up what's called a matriculation agreement to turn that associate's into becoming a junior at any Oregon State school. Right. So with minimal effort, I could just roll right into a junior. And then I went on to Oregon Institute of Technology, which sounds like it's one of those kind of cheesy computer colleges, but it's not. It's actually a Oregon State school like U of O or OSU or OIT. It's just a tech school. That took 11 years though. So from 92 to 2003, I was going to school. Wow. At night and making deals to make sure my credit didn't disappear and all those kind of things. It was quite dramatic.
I keep on thinking I will go back and finish my degree, but
you should do it. You'll feel good when you get it done. I'm telling you. I graduated with my 4-year degree in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it needed to be done.
About every 5 years, I go back and take a course, and then remember why I don't like taking courses.
Well, how close are you?
Not close. I think I have about a year and a half of a 4-year degree.
Oh, okay. See, if you were like middle of your junior year, from my perspective, there's just no excuse. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like if you've done more than 13 miles of the marathon, you can walk the rest.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But if you just kind of started and then, I don't really want to run a marathon, that's different. I just think that I always think it's tragic when people leave in their senior year. That's what I think is the problem.
It's crazy. I talked to someone who is literally one class away, and I'm like, now it's just an emotional problem. It's no longer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one class away, I think you're just looking for like you wanted to do it for party tricks. You know, like people. It's like if you have one class, you just wanted a reason to tell people, yeah, away. You know what I mean? Anyone who's one class away from a degree will always tell you that they're one class away from a degree. Absolutely.
So, what was your first job? I mean, you had this business. Did that thrive, or did you end up getting, a C++ job?
It thrived in that even though my family was kind of middle class, my dad was a fireman and my mom was a zookeeper. We're blue collar kind of folks, and no one had gone to college. I had more money in my pocket than the average kid. Not like big money. I wasn't like, big balling or whatever. But, I bought a $300 car when I was 15. And, I came out of high school with a couple of grand in my bank account, which is, non-trivial for a middle-class kid.
Absolutely.
That allowed me to move out of the house and get a fairly upscale apartment and all kind of stuff. Again, upscale is all relative when you're 19. Of course.
Not having 4 roommates is upscale.
This is my point. Yeah. I had a very nice 1-bedroom apartment by myself. But one of the things that I liked about the software engineering system program was that it had a required internship component. So in the second half of the second year, to graduate, you had to go and get an unpaid internship. And I went and got one at a place called Chrome Data, and they're actually still around. I think they're chrome.com.
Interesting.
And worked on their very first system. It was in Visual Basic 3 and SQL Server 4.2.1, Windows for Workgroups. Word 6, I think, was just starting to come out. COM automation was getting started. So I was the guy who did all of the low-level plumbing in the VB application. If old VB people will remember that you could basically bust into the Windows message pump and do crazy stuff with Visual Basic. So you'd write little seed things, and then you'd get the Dan Appleman VBX message pump tricky thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So they would come to me and they'd say, all right, when we minimize this window, I want you to grab the non-client area and then paint over the icon with the logo of the car company.
Right.
And then I would spend a week figuring that out and learned all about the internal windows, and then, read Petzold's books and all that kind of stuff. And then I did the DOS client, which was in Turbo Pascal. And from there did Delphi. And then we had we had a teacher come to do a class. We hired a local company and did a class. Came to teach us all a class so we learned more about, I don't know, C or whatever. I don't remember what we were learning. The teacher would come. And the teacher poached me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The teacher said, hey, this guy's got a potential, so we want him to come and become a consultant. Because I was actually, maybe being a little obnoxious in class, kind of like raising my hand and answering questions. Not obnoxious. I don't want to say I was being rude, but I was just being overly eager.
Sure.
So if the teacher made a mistake, I would respectfully correct them. But it was clear that I had an ability, at least from the technical perspective, that was on par with the teacher on the particular topic. And he was a super nice guy. And he was like, yeah, you need to come and work at our consulting company. So then I went to do that. And then started at the junior consultant level. And this is back in the 90s when, the mid-90s when we were just starting the first bubble.
Sure.
And building, and then ISAPI came out and the web was happening and Classic ASP started up. And so I started building websites, and I worked on 800.com, which was big during the 90s, early 2000s, gear.com, which became Overstock. 800.com got bought by Best Buy. So just a bunch of big, at the time, pre-Amazon type stuff, and went up to principal engineer at that company. I think I worked 6 or 7 years there. Helped open their training organization.
Did you have any early mentors that really, how would you figure out how you wanted to be in this business?
There were different people there was always a senior person on the things I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that the people that I worked best with were really mellow. It's like I worked with my buddy Joe Tillotson, and he was like the most calm, relaxed guy ever. Like, it doesn't matter how on fire and being chased by ninjas the project was. Joe was just super chill. Because ultimately he had a very realistic perspective. Like, we're not saving babies. This is not like cancer saving software here. This is inventory management for expired foods or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do.
So when everyone is freaking out and the customers freaking out and the sales manager's freaking out, it's not that big of a deal. We'll work it out. So it was a very calming influence. So that he was one of the people who kept me chill. I'm thinking of all of my different people. Every single one of them was mellow. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
I never really thought about that before, but basically all of my best managers are pretty relaxed. Just there's just no reason to be freaking out about really anything. And I like that.
I get that about you. That having a standard tone for your day is important to you.
Well, I think that there's just a lot of people that just can't just have a day that just is not some kind of freaking drama.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's just not that complicated. Like, I know people who go to the store, buy a bag of groceries, and come back, and they're just like, oh, the bagger was so, and the people, and they're so rude, and I got cut off in the parking lot, and it's just like, really? Gosh, it must be tiring to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, gosh, you got groceries, and you had drama at at every level. You know what I mean? So I'm the guy that, I like a good dramatic story as much as the next guy, but hey, you're trapped in the tarmac, you're stuck in your car for 10 hours, unless you're actually going to die and you're like pregnant or something, and you need to get out, hey, it's an adventure. So everybody just chill out and relax. We're all going to live. It's like that Louis C.K. thing about how we were stuck on the tarmac 40 minutes. 40 minutes, really? Wow, 40 minutes. You know what I mean? That was just a nightmare. No, it's not that big of a deal. Be prepared, relax, take a nap.
Absolutely. And I see that happen in software projects a lot, where there's this sort of, I don't want to say entitlement, but there are some people on projects that come in and worry so much about, the ceremony of it all, that sometimes they forget about the pragmatism of getting the job done. And, oh my God, what do you mean we have to use X, Y, or Z technology? Didn't they use that,
it'll be fine.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm being paid because the client is paying the bill, right? I've tried to keep that air of pragmatism for a long time because, I would love to, live in a perfect world where everything works exactly the way, you can do, the software engineering the right way sort of thing, where there's no technical debt and you can spend, as much time as you want to do the right things. But that's not how, business works, unfortunately.
But there is no right way. This is the other thing, right? We're not as organized as architects and builders and people who make, who make real buildings. Things change. You do the best you can. I think that, with all of the talk of Scrum and all the different things that are kind of considered cutting edge and best practices and lean software, these are all great things.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't overestimate or underestimate. You can't overestimate the value of just chilling out and having a conversation. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Yep.
Like you could have two projects with the exact same software practices, but if everyone is running around with their head cut off, just like everything is drama, that doesn't help anybody.
Nobody.
I very much believe in just get some work done. Put your head down, get the work done. I like to say that I think it was David Rakoff who said that being creative and making something is the opposite of hanging out. So whenever people are hanging out and freaking out about a particular thing, and the feeling that it's all very dramatic, so we have to let's all get around the water cooler and talk about how this project is a nightmare. It's just maybe go and do the work.
at some point you have to, put the pen to paper, as it were, and just move on. Mm-hmm. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about. I've heard this story. I don't know if it was from you or about you, to be honest with you, but your attempt to try out for SNL.
No, that's a myth.
It is a myth?
That is a myth. I had an idea to start an online campaign to have someone host SNL who was a total stranger. Like, we have all these really lousy famous people host SNL, right? The whole idea, like, you have to have a famous person to host SNL. Why not have a nobody host SNL?
Interesting.
So make a whole campaign. No, exactly. Just a literal nobody. And then show them that a complete random person, me, would put together a perfectly competent episode of Saturday Night Live, right? Given the low bar of late. But no, I've never tried out for SNL. I have a couple of friends who have, but not me. I'm afraid not. I don't have the patience for comedy. I've realized that I did some stand up and I did some open mics, and I had, I did some stuff locally here, and I realized that I think I just have too much contempt for the audience. And by that I mean like the kind of like the drunk Portland comedy show late night audience is not the people that I am feeling excited about entertaining. That's interesting. You know what I mean? But I very much enjoy entertaining you guys. You know what I mean? And by that I mean, my peers and, fun corporate people for some reason somehow are just more respectful of a good show than people who paid $5 as a cover to get into a club. And are drunk. That's absolutely true. You really can't underestimate that the drunk makes a huge difference. You know what I mean? I do. I just don't want to fight with hecklers and stuff like that. It just makes me feel bad about myself. Well, I will say that I do enjoy the drunk technical crowd. They're not quite the same. Well, as a non-drinker, I don't know. I just like watching the. There's something about awkward geeks drinking alcohol and thinking it'll make them, more sociable, that I do find a bit more entertaining than I probably should. Yeah. So, tell me about why you came to Microsoft. We met years ago. I think you were still at the banking company. Oh, yeah, Carillion. I was afraid to mispronounce it. Oh, that's okay. And then when everything sort of went upside down in the country, but also in Portland, and I moved out, seemingly everyone I knew in Portland suddenly became Microsoft employees. No. This is the other thing, right? There's always this sense of like, if the three people that either start at Microsoft or quit Microsoft, it looks like it's a big pattern, right? There was a time there when people were saying everyone's leaving. And I think it's because Hack and Chris Sells left within 6 months of each other. Right. That's not a pattern. No. That's two people guys making their own decisions. I was at a thing called Foo Camp, FOO Camp. It's a Friends of O'Reilly. It's O'Reilly Publishing. And I was at Foo Camp in Sebastopol, California. And Scott Guthrie happened to be there at the same time, and my company, Carillion, which was getting bought by Check Free, and then they got bought by Fiserv. So they were getting there's this Russian nesting doll thing where my nice little 400-person startup, publicly traded but startup, was getting bought by a 4,000-person company, and then that company was getting bought by a 40,000-person company. Literally. Right. And so I was going to go from being chief architect of this awesome boutique to being random guy that does Visio for money at the in the enterprise architecture division of some larger thing that I had no interest in working on. And then Guthrie was like, "Hey, I read your blog," and I was just blogging about what I blog about. I blog about stuff I build and life and bugs. I think and I also am consistent. That's the other thing. People don't realize how important just showing up is for blogging. Absolutely. People are like, why are you such a great blogger? I'm not really that good of a blogger. I just don't stop. Right. You've never let quality get in the way of actually producing content. No, I mean, seriously though, it's funny, but it's true, right? You can say what you like, but like Hanselman, it's right. It's not the best podcast by any means, but it's been absolutely consistent. And, I get a good one every once in a while. But it's really sad when you start a podcast or a show or whatever and then leave it there.
Right.
And that's the end of it.
When I started this podcast, I was sort of playing around with different names. And there were actually 2 other podcasts that were the Hello World podcast that were, but they were both 3 or 4 podcasts and gone. Yeah.
See, that's really sad.
Yeah.
And whenever you visit someone's blog and it says, and the most recent blog post is the one that says, I'm rededicating myself to blogging. I'm back. You know what I mean? And it's just like 2011. Wow, man, that's really bad.
That is the saddest thing in the world, isn't it?
It is really sad.
That's not nearly the saddest thing in the world, but it is sad.
But Guthrie said, "Hey, come work on ASP.NET and MSDN at the time." And I said, "Hey, well, I don't want to move to Seattle because the Redmond reality distortion field is real." And he's like, "No, you can work remote and we'll figure it out." And nice. I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try."
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that was basically as complicated as it got. It was not that complicated.
Wow. And you've been there now, what, 30 years? 25 years?
I think it is now, it'll be 6 years in April, I think. I have to look it up, but I think it's 6 years. I think of it as 5, but it's been 6.
Really? Because I've been out of Portland for 12, 13, probably 13 years now. And I thought it was soon after that you had joined Microsoft, but evidently not.
No, you can go check. I can actually.
No, I believe you.
Google it right now.
I wasn't actually, questioning it.
No. But people, some people think that I am a shill and I sold out, and I remind them that I didn't really need the money. Yeah, I don't really. I'll work where it's awesome. As soon as Microsoft stops being good at something, I will then quit. You know what I mean? But I'm very straightforward about that. I absolutely really don't care. And
I think most people that look at it, realistically, they call most MVP shills as well. But I don't know anyone as critical of Microsoft as many of the MVPs are. Mm-hmm. Which I find, sort of fascinating because they think much like employees that, you're just there as part of the marketing machine. Well, so I don't work for marketing. I'll say that. Oh, I do spread the word about the stuff that I think is cool. Yeah. Right. If my team is working on something and we dig it, then I'm going to talk about it. That's how it is. And it's also the stuff that you're seeing every day. So it's not like, not like you're being handed the list of talking points. No, that never happens. No, they actually, the fact that they don't talk to me is both a good thing and a bad thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to go to South by Southwest this year, but I'm going on my own. Mm-hmm. And then I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I really wish the Microsoft Windows people would give me a call. I can help them. Right, I could host a dinner, I could give a presentation, I could do demos, I could do whatever, And I even tried reaching out to them and letting them know that I would be out there and be able to help them in some way. They don't even care. They don't even know who I am. You know what I mean? The Windows organization, they have no idea who I am. I'm good. But what do you do? Hey, I'm kind of a big deal. I've got a blog. You should. No, they don't. They do not care. They have no care. And they don't really care that I'm there, and they don't exist. As long as I don't blog anything mean. But I blogged that high DPI thing originally about how high DPI sucks in Windows. And basically there's 2 replies. One was how dare you? And then the other one was really awesome. It was from the high DPI people. They were like, hey, great discussion. Thanks for getting this started. And we're watching and collecting information from your comments. Oh, that's awesome. Right? And I think that you said something about the MVPs being critical. I don't like the way that a lot of them are what I call non-constructively critical. Sure. There's just a lot of rage and frustration and a lot of people just don't think before they blog. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They give bile a permalink and it just shows that they're being a jerk. And they complain and they complain and they complain, and no value is there. And then the comments turns into a complaint section. So sometimes when people say, hey, Hanselman, why did you sell out? Why did you go to Microsoft? Well, it's hey,
this is me being defensive. I'm here fixing stuff, making it better. If you would like to make it better too, come work here. Otherwise, if you're not making it better, shut up. You know what I mean? And isn't that an awful thing to say? But you see where I'm coming from. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do. There, there's a line. There was certainly a period of a couple of years where there were a couple of groups at Microsoft that weren't very happy with me because I was pretty upset about some things. And, of course, I wasn't willing to come work at Microsoft to help fix them. But, and so, I try to straddle that line of criticism, but where it helps but not piling on. The piling on is they know that, this was just a hard decision to make, and me telling them they're idiots for making it isn't helpful. And so, I think you learn. I think I'm better at that than I used to be. But at the same time, I'm happy to use whatever technology solves it. And if it's often Microsoft that is the best solution for the things I'm doing, but it's not always. And that's okay with me now. I think there was one point where it wasn't, as okay. I thought, I need to try to fix. If I apply pressure, then maybe it can get fixed, because I can't move to Seattle because I just don't like the idea of living there. Right. And, this is what I can do, but I don't have to be vitriolic.
Well said. Better said than I. It's just, you complain, but offer suggestions. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I've seen so many different things where people just rage randomly about how Windows 8 sucks. Right. But then you see other ones where someone's like, Windows 8 sucks, and here's my redesign and suggestion for it. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And then when people declare, oh, Microsoft doesn't care, doesn't look at feedback, then you learn that they're courting the person that wrote that blog post, or they actually had a phone call with that person, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yes, some VP at Microsoft is not going to call you every single time you complain about something, of course, online. But if you really add to the discourse, you never know when someone's going to give you a call and work it out and have that conversation. There have been a number of times when people would write, kind but firm, clear feedback about some aspect of something that they didn't like in Azure, and I would go and I do this every once in a while. I'll chase them down. Like, I will call them at their house. It freaks them out. You know what I mean? Like, how did you get this number? But that's part of the mystique. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why not? Like, I will totally do that. I will find that person. I'll say, hey, I really thought that was great. Or I'll solve the problem and get the word out. I got a email from Guthrie many years ago now. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was exactly that. He was like, if I will, seems that the team wasn't aware of this problem. Can you connect with this guy who's responsible, and let's see if we can do it? And that makes a huge difference. Of course, I wasn't calling for the destruction of a whole division within Microsoft, as sometimes happens on the internet. I don't know if you're aware. I try not to call for the destruction of anyone. Again, It's not that big of a deal. No, it's not. It's just software. Well, it's been a delight talking with you today. A delight? That's an upgrade. That makes me happy. Isn't that a great word? Delight. I am delighted. Yeah.